Hey guys, in this video we are going to have a conversation with Gary Sobbry. He's an amazing automotive refinisher from Michigan with more than 25 years of experience. He has a YouTube channel called Refinish Media. Make sure to follow him. We are going to place all the information in the description. He's going to teach us about techniques and materials from the automotive industry applied to guitar finishing. The video is going to have timestamps so you can jump to whatever information you're looking for, but I highly encourage you to listen to the whole thing because every second of the video is very valuable. There's a lot of detailed information that you don't want to miss. And if you like, please subscribe. I'm working really hard to bring as much information as possible from experts. Guitar finishing is a very underserved trade, in my opinion, so your support will definitely help change that, hopefully. Thank you.
My name is Gary Sobbry. I live in Michigan. I'm a fourth generation painter, hot rod builder, customizer. My family has been in this business for over 100 years. So father to son, father to son. That's all we've done. That's all we've known. When I was a little kid, all I wanted to do was build hot rods like Gene Winfield or some of those guys. Boyd Coddington was a hero of mine when I was a teenager, and I was lucky enough to start a shop right after high school behind my dad's shop, and then we grew that into a big business. And then I started teaching auto body in Ann Arbor, and I've been teaching automotive refinishing for about 25 years there. And my business partner, his name is David. He's a younger guy. He's only 23, but he's super, super smart. I'm the dumb one. He's the smart one. And he's a refinish technician by trade, too. So there's two of us that own the company, and we're both painters. And we're very passionate about painting and knowledge.
Mm-hmm. So are you teaching for like an institution, or is it your own school?
No,
Or
it's a college. No, it's a real college.
okay. Yeah,
Yep.
I always wonder, like, where do you go to learn how to paint cars? I know that PPG offers like, lessons or courses, but I never
Yep.
got a hold of how to do it. So yeah.
Yeah, PPG is the main brand that I use. We do use other brands, but PPG has been my number one brand for probably 20, 25 years. There's a guy named Jeff Matouche who lives in Michigan. And in my opinion, and it's just an opinion, is Jeff is one of the biggest and best minds when it comes to automotive refinishing. So when I have a question, and I've been around the block a couple times, but when I have a question on how does this work? What should I do in this situation or whatever? Jeff is always the number one guy that I call first. And he used to teach in Michigan forever. So I was a real big fan of like going to PPG school and learning about their products and stuff because of Jeff. Unfortunately, Jeff retired. And I'm sure there's some good PPG teachers out there, but I'm just not familiar with them. And they closed a lot of their facilities. So if you wanted to quote unquote go to school for a paint or body, you would have to find a community college or a high school or something in your area and take like a painting class or a body class. And there's some good ones out there,
Yep.
but it's far and few between, unfortunately.
Right. And if you want to go, if you want to get into the field, let's say you want to start painting in a body shop. Do you need to be accredited, or can you be like a self-taught guy?
It depends. It depends state to state, shop to shop. I would love to tell you that you should at least be state certified, like either full blown state certified. That's just a simple test, or ASC certified, which is a simple test. Unfortunately, most body shops will hire anybody and they'll train them themselves, and that's not a bad way. A lot of us we learn that way. I think it's better to get some formal training, but college isn't for everyone. School's not for everyone.
Right.
But I wish I could tell you that you had to go through and pass a test. Unfortunately, a lot of guys started off washing cars, then they became a painter's helper, and then they became a painter. And just because they've been doing it for 20 years doesn't mean that they have all the answers. So unfortunately, this industry is just wide open. There's no rule book to it.
Right. Yeah. And it's crazy how very few education there is on the wood coating side. There is a lot of information, a lot of products, but there are like very few schools, so everybody's like winging it a little bit. You know, it's yeah.
They're winging it a lot. And be honest with you, again, there's a lot of good schools out there. But that being said, there's a lot of teachers, there's a lot of programs that are completely outdated. The person teaching it could never make it in the industry, doesn't really know what he's talking about, but he's training the next generation. So, unfortunately, it's buyer beware in this industry, and it's kind of always been that way. That paint and body has been the Wild West forever. If a guy can talk a good talk, he's almost like a used car salesman. If he can talk a good talk, like, yeah, give me all this money, I promise we'll do it right. And then as soon as he gets your money, he's just hacking stuff up and it fails, and then he's gone. And
Right.
I'm seeing less and less of that, especially with the internet now, but it still goes on every day, unfortunately.
Can you talk about automotive clear coats, how they work, and how to spray it?
Sure. It doesn't matter if it's a guitar or it doesn't matter if it's a car. Essentially, they share the same purpose.
Uh-huh.
Is they're there to protect the base coat. When I say base coat, I simply mean the color. So basically, it's there to protect it because the base coat is weak. What's it protecting it from? Well, on a car, it's protecting it from UV protection, meaning the sun, acid rain, bird poop, stone chips, and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So it does perform some aesthetics, meaning how pretty it looks or how deep it looks. They call it DOI, depth of image. A lot of the kids on the street will say how wet it is. So, ironically, most yahoos on the street, when they buy a clear, if it sprays good and if it sands like they wet sand and wheel it, and it's cheap, oh, this is the best clear. Buy brand X or buy brand XY. Be honest with you, with a car, yeah, you want to get like best bang for your buck. Money's always important. But why do all that work and have the sun beat it down in 2 years and it starts chalking up and failing and stuff because you saved $100?
I
And
have
with
seen it.
Oh yeah, and most guys, and I'll say most guys, is they're cheating and cutting corners on their clear. And with the guitar, and I don't play guitar, so I'm not an expert in guitars, but I would imagine like your belt buckles rubbing on the back and your fingers are strumming on it. Is you don't want a clear coat that's really cheap, and I don't mean in cost, I mean in quality, because your fingernails will wear through it or handling it, putting it on the case over time. So I would always spend money on a high quality clear. And like even some of these big name brands, they'll be, let's say, a month old, which should be enough time to cure. And you can put your fingernail in it and it's still soft a month or two later. That's a good sign that that's not high quality clear, because
Ah,
if I was to paint something today in my garage, let's say it was 70 degrees, it might be dry tomorrow. But most 2K products, and a good clear coat's always going to be a 2K product, meaning it's got a hardener or a catalyst, it will take around 30 days to cure. And there is a difference between being dry and being cured.
correct. Yeah, because it's crazy. I have sprayed guitars with like I don't know if I should name the brand, but some recognized brand,
Yeah,
and
we can name the brand. Who cares?
SPI, for example.
SPI. Okay. Yep.
Yeah,
Southern Products. Yep.
it's highly regarded, and
Yep.
it sprays better than anything that I can buy in a auto paint store, right?
Yep.
But it never got hard at the point where you can nail it and it's not going to leave any mark. It's I don't know if I did something wrong. The curing times were wrong. I don't know, but
No, and I'm not an expert in SPI. I'll tell you my thoughts on them. Is the internet loves SPI because they have great customer support. So I hear, and they're pretty affordable.
Yeah.
They're known for their epoxy primers being pretty good for the money.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, and I'm speculating here that their clear is not up to par with some of the bigger names. Like let's just say for argument's sake that PPG and BASF are the best, which I don't think that's debatable. I think that's fact. I think that will make some people mad out there. They can be mad all they want.
Yeah.
But even PPG or BASF, they have a good, better, best line. So like with BASF, Glazerith is their top dog. It's their most expensive, best. Dymont's below that, and then they have an economy line. Same thing with PPG. The Omni and Shop line is their economy, and then if you wanted to go solvent, they have Deltron, which used to be DBC, now it's NXT, or like their top dog for their water is called EnviroBase. So, you I don't want to say you get what you pay for because sometimes you can get robbed too,
Yeah.
but you do sometimes get what you pay for with these products.
So the Deltron is the highest tier, let's say.
Yes, in the world of PPG, we want to go back 30 years. It was called DBU, and that was their top dog. And then they started calling it Deltron 2000, which is DBC. And now, and it's been about a year and a half, they still call it Deltron, but it's technically NXT. That's their top dog solvent.
Okay. We're
If you
talking,
wanted to, what's that?
yeah, we're talking $500 a gallon, something like that, right?
It
Or even more.
depends. Like, it could be more than that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's weird because, like, if I bought a gallon of black, it used to be very inexpensive. Black was typically one of the cheaper colors. Red was one of the more expensive colors. Is if you buy a high end black now, it could be $600, $700, $800 a gallon, which is crazy.
Yeah. I know. That's top dollar for sure. So, technically speaking, can you tell me like what are the reasons besides the fact of you're using a bad clear,
Yep.
of why clears stay soft for so long and they never cure? Like why does that happen?
Okay. Let's just say for argument's sake that you bought a good clear and it was from a reputable company and it never got hard.
Mhm.
Back in the day, we used to have a lot of glamour clears that looked good, but they weren't designed for like really durability because it was more for like show cars. I don't use those clears, but they still exist on the street.
Yeah.
If you had a clear not get hard on you, it could be from you mixed it incorrectly. Like let's say it was a 3-1-1 or a 4-1-1 mix, and then you didn't add the right hardener or the right amount. That could be it. More than likely, too, is when you buy your clear coats or your primers or your reducers, most reducers, especially in solvent, they'll last forever as long as they don't freeze or get like super hot. I mean, you could have a reducer that's 20 years old or solvent base coat that's 20 years old and it's fine. But the hardeners, the catalyst, the activator, whatever you want to call it, most of those, they might have a shelf life of a year or two at the most. And believe it or not, some of these isocyanate products is when you open them up and you pour a little bit out and then you cap it and you put it away, some of those products can be junk in days or weeks. So if you're using like an old hardener that you've had kicking around and it's an ISO hardener, which not all hardeners are ISOs, but most are nowadays,
Yeah.
is that primer that hardener could be junk. Like the clear might still be good, the reducer might be good, but you might be mixing it wrong, buying old hardener because nobody looks at the bottom of the can that says the production date, which you should,
Ooh.
or they opened it up and it actually has gone bad.
Ooh,
So
okay.
there's like 100 ways to get hurt in this industry, unfortunately.
Yeah, man.
And I've been hurt. I've been hurt every which way. So it sounds like that I'm perfect on my end. I'm far from perfect. I just
Yep.
been doing it for a long time, and I've been burned every which way but loose.
Yeah, I mean, because compared to wood coatings, which is what the standard guitar industry uses, the flow and the gloss of an automotive clear, it's unparalleled in my opinion. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a shame.
Well, here's the cool thing about like wood. Like let's say you wanted to take all the grain and all the texture out, which some people may not want to do that, especially on an acoustic guitar. But let's say you had a guitar body and it was made out of wood and you really, really wanted to make it perfect, like the hood of a Ferrari or better. There's a company called Evercoat, and they're not the only company that sells this. There's plenty of competitors out there, but I use Evercoat. Uh, and it's a polyester primer, and it's called Slick Sand. And I used to pay like $100 a gallon for it, like 4 years ago. Now it's probably closer to 200 a gallon. It comes with the catalyst, so it's all in one kit. The bad thing is about it is you need a huge tip gun. Where like when I'm talking about the tip, the nozzle side, the fluid tip needs to be probably a 2.2 or bigger. That's huge.
Oh wow.
And if you sand it, let's say with some 150 to 180 grit range, and make sure it's clean and dry, and you get all the dust off, and you put 4 coats of that slick sand or three, because four is a lot, you might be getting almost 20 mils, which is like 4 times thicker than a factory paint job. It's basically sprayable Bondo. You'll be able to sand that stuff and remove every imperfection known to man. And you can either steel or base coat over that and clear it. And it's really, really forgiving stuff. I'm a big fan of that polyester primer.
Oh, it's a polyester primer. Cool, cool,
It
cool.
is. It is.
Yeah, because whatever you spray on top of a primer or a sealer, that coating is gonna copy whatever it's underneath. So if it's flat, it's gonna be flat. The clear
Yeah.
is gonna be flat. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, the cool thing about painting a guitar is that the clear coat, like, would be the same as a car. You got good, better, best choices. The base coat would be just like a car, good, better, best. The sealers, the high build primers could be the same. The only like weird spot you have with the guitar, and this gets a little bit complicated, is the first primer that touches the wood, or let's say you have a steel guitar or whatever, some kind of composite guitar, you want to make sure that the first primer that's touching it is designed to work with whatever that guitar is made out of. We call it the substrate.
Substrate.
And
Mm-hmm.
not all products are designed to go over wood or metal or plastic. So that's the one thing you want to confirm.
Right. Okay.
The cool thing about polyester is it will go over wood, no problem. If you have a steel guitar, it could go over steel or plastic. A lot of guys call it DTM, direct to metal. I hate that saying. I hate that term. If it was a steel guitar or a plastic, I would love to have a little light coat of epoxy put on, let it sit for a day or two, because that's going to really help with adhesion, especially on the plastic. On the bare metal, assuming you're doing a steel guitar, I like the epoxy because it has great adhesion, but it actually will protect the guitar from not rusting out, and then throw that big polyester slick sand on top of that.
Oh wow. Yeah, polyester is a very high build product, and I wonder if that polyester is the same polyester that I use, which is for furniture. Uh,
Yep.
and it's like very very thick, and yeah, you need like a very big tip. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, PPG makes their own polyester and as well. And there's other companies. There's a company called Clawson that's really well known and well respected with a K.
Yep.
And to be honest with you, most of these polyesters are made. They're buying their raw materials from one or two suppliers, and then the company is putting their little spin on it. So if you buy brand A versus brand B, they're not night and day difference.
Okay.
I use Evercoat because I like Evercoat. They're a great company. They're a reputable company.
Yep.
I never have any problems with it. The availability. Does somebody sell it for $10 a gallon or cheaper? Probably. but I'm going to continue to shoot Evercoat Slick Sand because I've been using those guys for 20, 30 years. And they're a stand-up company and they're a stand-up product. I mean, I know guys that are putting it on cars that are $1, 2, 3, $4 million, and it never fails.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Good to know.
Yeah.
Um, so regarding uh, mill thickness, right? I see
Yep.
that most manufacturers recommend 2 to 3 max, right? So
No,
uh-huh,
a good rule of thumb
for
is
clears. Uh-huh.
oh, for clears,
Yeah.
it depends on the clear. Most like if you worked in a collision shop, if you did production, most guys are going to put one coat of clear on the cut-ins, meaning inside the doors, backside of the hood, usually two on the outside of the car. Depending on how you spray and depending on what the clear is, if I had to guess the world of averages, one coat of clear is like a mil to a mil and a half. Like if you're heavy handed. So guys are putting 2 to 3 mils of clear on the outside of a car on a production car,
Uh-huh.
like at a body shop. OEM's doing less than that, like from the factory. When I do a car, I do a high end custom car. I'm typically putting 4 coats of clear on. I know some guys that are doing 6, 7, 8. You better make sure that the clear is designed to go on that thick because most clears are not. But they do make some clears that you can put on. We call it stacking. You can put on multiple coats. So let's say I put 4 coats on. I'm 4 to 6 mils thick just on my clear. My clear is thicker than a factory paint job.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But what that does for me though is let's say I flake out a guitar. And if you do the base, let's say I paint the car red, and then I take some like a DBC 500 type product and I throw some metal flake in it. If I put 2 coats of clear on there, like the collision shop taught me, is it looks really dirty because all the aluminum standing up. So I
Yep.
got to sand it and then re-clear it. But in some cases, if I've got I don't want to call it especially clear because it sounds rare and expensive. That's not necessarily the case. But if I use a clear coat that's specifically designed to put on multiple coats, I could put that 4 coats on. I could sand all of that aluminum dirt or whatever out of it, and then I could sand and polish it. So, I mean, why paint the thing twice if you don't have to? So I'm using different clears than, let's say, the average guy in a collision shop is
Uh-huh.
because my world is different than his.
Right, right. Okay, so you can actually stack clears, but not in one session. You have to, let's say, do 4 max, let it dry, sand, and then 4 more if you want that depth, let's say. Because the reason I'm asking is because on guitars, since we have so many contours, you need to have a lot of material to sand in order to be able to polish later and not burn through, you know?
Yep. Yep.
So that's has been always my question. Like, how many coats can you stack in one session before it becomes a problem? Let's say
it totally depends on the clear. So if you get like a speed clear or like a low end clear and you put more than 2 on it, you could have a problem. If you get a clear that's specifically designed for, like, let's say show cars,
uh-huh.
and that in the technical data sheet will tell you 1 to 2 coats, 3 to 4 coats, and they're not always correct. But I'll tell you, if money's not an issue, PPG makes the clear. It used to be called 8115, 8115. No, 8152. I'm sorry, 8152. They recently, like a year or two ago, changed the name to DC 5050.
Okay.
That clear is super expensive, but if we're talking about like the best clear money can buy, I don't care, I'm rich. That clear is awesome if you use the flow reducers and the flow catalysts,
Uh-huh.
and you can put 4 huge coats of clear on there with no problem. PPG sells this other clear that you could actually probably put 6 coats on. It's called DC 5700. And again, this is not cheap stuff.
Yeah.
But if you're really trying to put a lot of material on in one round, those clears are specifically designed to do that.
Okay, so I guess you can use it for burying tape lines,
Yep,
custom paints.
absolutely. That's exactly what that 5700 clear was designed for. Burying tape lines, burying peel, burying flake, and like, two tones and flame jobs. It's a great clear.
It's a high solid clear, I guess.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much all this stuff, like, I mean, the engineers and the nerds will get mad at me. Everybody likes to throw around the word high solids and Euro clear and like all this stuff. And I mean, there's definitely some truth to it, but it's almost like an advertisement ploy after a while. I mean,
Uh-huh.
most clear coat, and again, there's a lot of clears out there, is I would say that they're probably around the 50% mark. So if I mixed up a cup and I put 200 milliliters of clear in it and I wait 30 days, it's going to lose 50% of its volume over time.
Uh-huh.
And they
Okay.
still call that high solids clear.
Right, right, right. Okay, I get it.
Can you talk about base coats? Everything from solids, metallics, pearls, candies, and how to spray it.
Let's break base coats down into two major categories. You
Uh-huh.
have your traditional base coat is solvent. That's more popular on the street, but
Solvent.
then
Okay.
waterborne is super popular too. One's not better than the other. There's advantages and disadvantages of each. Waterborne typically covers faster and better. And if you don't like having that hard line when you're doing a two-tone or graphics, waterborne might work better. But a lot of people have been spraying a long time. They're like, no, I mix, I use solvent. I'm comfortable with it. Fine. Especially if you're not moving a lot of air, solvent may work better. Or if it's a high humid day. But I mean, everyone wants to say solvent is better than water or water is better than solvent. That's not true. A
Uh-huh.
Cadillac is different than a pickup truck. All right, they both have their place and their purpose. I spray water and solvent. Um, when you mix solvent, and again, I'm going off of PPG, whatever brand you're using, you want to follow the technical data sheet. The mix ratio for Shopline, which is JB Base Coat, that's their low end stuff. That is 1-to-1, and they use JR reducers. If you go to NXT or DBC, it's typically 1-to-1 with DT reducers.
Uh-huh.
Now, the weird part is, and again, we're talking PPG, but this is true 99% of the time with other manufacturers. If I'm painting a solid color, not a metallic, not a pearl, not a candy, I could dial back a little bit of that reducer and it would cover faster. If I dial back too much, like let's say I go 1 part base, a half a part reducer, it might get peely, but it would cover fast. If I go 1-to-1, all right, it would lay out nice, but it would take more coats to cover.
Yep.
So usually, if you want simplicity, just mix that base coat 1-to-1. What do? I usually spray my solids 1 to 3/4 or 4 to 3, however you look at it. And if I'm spraying a metallic candy or a pearl, I just keep it 1-to-1 so it atomizes better. Can you use someone else's reducer? Absolutely.
Okay.
I don't want to say reducer is reducer, but that's true. If it's a urethane reducer, it's probably the same. But here's the thing. If I'm spraying a candy or a metallic or pearl, if I buy a gallon of, let's say the shop line stuff, it's like $40 a gallon. If I buy the DT reducer, the high end, it's $100 a gallon. So it's more than twice as much.
Yeah.
And guys will tell you all reducers the same. If you're not trying to do super high quality work, if you're doing solid colors, if we're talking about reducer in your primer, that may be true. But if I'm shooting a candy, a metallic, or pearl, the higher end reducer will always make the color look prettier and lay out better.
Oh,
So
man.
it's a big difference.
Oh, wow.
And you always want to lean towards a slower reducer or a slower hardener too. Because
Mhm.
everyone's buying fast hardeners, fast reducers. In the world of base coat, you want to use a slower reducer, lighter coats. So
Right.
and most people will argue and say that I'm wrong and they've been doing it this way for 30, I've done it every way. I went through training, if the job matters, the reducer is worth it. The cool thing about the reducer, if I buy a gallon of reducer and if it's $100 and I only need a quart of it, as long as it doesn't freeze in the trunk of my car because I'm in Michigan or it sits like in 400-degree weather in the blazing sun, as long as I keep the top on it, that reducer will still be good 25 years from now.
Oh, wow.
I
Okay.
mean, all it is a solvent.
Right. When people say solvent, it means that the technology is urethane. And the reason I'm asking this is because if that's true, can you mix everything that is urethane with each other? Meaning intercoat, metallics, solid base coats, everything that is urethane, you can mix them and you won't have any issues?
That's probably true, but here's the bad thing. And again, I'm not trying to push PPG. The only reason why I keep bringing up PPG is because that's what I'm most comfortable with.
Yeah.
Is that if I'm doing a paint job, is I make sure I follow PPG's tech sheet or BASF's tech sheet or SPI's tech sheet, and I use this primer that's designed to work with this primer that's designed to work with this sealer, this base coat, and clear coat, because I don't want to have a failure in some 1 out of 100. It fights off the coat because this reducer or this base didn't work with this sealer. It's
Yeah.
rare, but when it happens, it's devastating.
Ah.
So I'm such a weirdo and I follow the rules so much where I'm following a system where if money's tight, I'll use, like, let's say PPG shop line. I'll use
Correct.
all of their like sealers, their primers, their base coats, and their clear. If money's not an issue, I'll use PPG's higher end stuff. And because like what you're suggesting, we call it intermixing systems.
Uh-huh.
And guys do it, and it works, and it's done a lot. But I'm not a big fan of it because when it goes down bad, and nobody's going to help you out. And my labor, my I don't know, my ego, my labor, my pride can't take failures because I tried to save $20 on a job.
Well,
If you're doing it, you're not wrong. I'm just being brutally honest.
no, that's fine, and that will be the best mentality, let's say. And the second part of that question would be, if you want to sand the substrate before the base coat in order to make it look as clean as possible, what would be the highest grit that you can go and not sacrifice adhesion? Because I made the mistake before to sand, let's say, the sealer or the primer to 1,000, and I saw that the base coat didn't adhere properly. So what would be the highest?
Okay, so let's say that my car or my guitar is in primer. You don't necessarily have to use a sealer because sealer is an extra step.
Yeah.
Sealer will add a lot of orange peel, and that's a whole conversation and debate, and I can see it both ways. But let's say I'm gonna use a sealer.
Yeah.
I typically, if I'm gonna use a sealer, and if it's a solid color, I'm typically in like around a true 400. With you guys, it could be 400 wet or 400 dry. If it's a non-solid, meaning metallic candy or pearl, and I'm going to use a sealer, I typically want to be in around a 600 grit. Let's say I'm from the school that I don't use a sealer. My primer, there's no cut throughs. I'm going right to base. Now, I'm not saying you're wrong, but let's say that's your philosophy. I would probably base over a 600 grit if I'm not using a sealer with a solid color, and probably an 800 grit if it's a metallic candy or pearl. And again, we're talking solvent. If I seal it and base it and I got some dirt or I got some peel and it's not horrible, I typically will come in with a little bit of 600 or 800 grit, wet sand or dry sand that peel out, get it clean, get it dry, get it tacked, and I can rebase a solid color, no problem, over 600, a metallic candy or pearl over 8.
Okay.
And then if I'm just clearing something, I can clear over, and there's going to be no sealer, no base. I can clear over an 800 grit, and the sand scratches will never show. And that's usually a pretty good rules to have with solvent and urethane clears and stuff.
Okay, so you still get good adhesion with 800.
Yeah.
That's
The
good
reason why
news.
the reason why I will not clear over 1,000, not that 1,000 is bad, is it's one more step, which is time and money.
Yeah.
It's buying more sandpaper, which is time and money. And like a lot of our brains work, yeah, but I don't care about the time and money. I want to do it right. It's actually less mechanical adhesion. It
Correct.
is it is better to go over a rougher scratch. Like when I'm priming something, my philosophy is the exact opposite of what I'm clearing something. And what I mean by that is when I'm primering something, I typically want to go over the finest scratch that the company suggests or allows because I'm worried about shrinkage over time and showing sand scratches.
Yeah.
But then when I'm clearing over something, I typically, my philosophy is I want to clear over the roughest scratch I can without showing sand scratches so I have the strongest mechanical adhesion.
That's right. And the reason I'm trying to see what's the highest grid I can go is because, especially with metallics, you know
Yep.
very well that you spray metallics over some scratches and they will show. You know.
Yep. Yeah.
So
Usually 800 grit, you'll be fine. Sorry, I'm getting up and walking. I gotta, since my camera's acting up, I'm gonna put my phone on a charger. But usually 800 grit's fine. The thing about metallics when you spray them is like your last couple coats, it sometimes will get dry on you, especially on a hot day.
yeah.
You can over reduce your metallics by 10%. Don't get crazy. I mean, actually do the math and add 10%. You can do a couple drop coats. And the cool thing is if you use a slower reducer, it will lay out and look better. So typically solids, like I can like if I'm talking solvent paint, typically I can spray solvents a little bit wetter. Like let's say that I like base coat's designed to go on like a 5 wet. We talked about that 1 to 10 scale.
Yeah.
I can cheat and spray my solids like a 7. I don't want to spray them like clear, but I can spray them wetter because they're not going to model like my metallics, candies, or pearls.
Right.
Now with waterborne, you typically spray waterborne a lot wetter than solvents. I mean, the book tells you that they're all sprayed the same and this, that, and other. Guys that have been painting a long time will tell you that a solid color you can get away spraying a little bit wetter. A metallic, you want to spray it like the book says. And then with waterborne, you can typically spray it a little wetter too.
Can you tell us what Intercoat is and how to use it?
Yep. So a lot of people do like consider it like a 1K clear coat. I don't. And the reason why is like House of Colors used to call it Intercoat Clear, and that's very confusing. Really what it is, and let's talk solvent because wet bed or waterborne is a little different, but let's talk solvent. A product like DBC 500, and again, that's just transparent base. I think it's like JC 605 if you do a shop line. The cool thing is you mix it 1-to-1 just like base. You spray it just like base. Want to know why? Because it's base. It's base coat. So let's say I'm painting a car or a motorcycle black, and then I'm going to put some like pearl or some metallic purple over top of it. If I spray a coat of black on, I don't spray my base on wet like clear. I don't spray it dry, spray it on medium. Let's say I wait 10 minutes, I tack it, I spray another coat, wait 10 minutes, tack it, spray another coat. I check it with my light, it's covered, great. Now I do my DBC 500 with my pearl or my metallic the same exact way because it's exactly the same as base coat minus the color. Same gun, same pressure, same wetness, same philosophy, same time in between coats. And that's the beautiful thing about it.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah. So treat it like a base coat. That's it.
Yeah, because that's essentially what it is. It's like I always tell people it's like an albino white person. It's color minus color.
So yeah, it's a carrier. It's a base coat that dries because the solvents evaporate, but there is
Yes.
no catalyzer in it.
For not being a painter, you sure know your stuff. Yes, it's drying by evaporation. Now, here's the weird part. I don't want to throw anybody a curveball. Is most solvent is a 1K product, meaning it doesn't have a catalyst, and that's a fact. But
Okay.
let's say, for argument's sakes, you were, and this is true with every company. But again, we're talking PPG. You're using the DBC or NXT line. The mix ratio is 1-to-1. It uses DT reducers. And for whatever reason, you go, I really wish I could do a 2K base coat. And I really wish my DBC 500 was 2K because it would be stronger. Great.
Uh-huh.
They make a product called DX57. It's 1.5 ounces per sprayable quart or 5%. You just add that harder to it, and you turn a 1K base coat into a 2K.
All
And
right.
every company has that. And there's advantages and disadvantages to catalyzing your base coat. But if you're anti 1K base coat for whatever reason, that you can change that.
But this is not considered a single stage. You still need to clear it.
You still need to clear it. It is different than single stage, and you would still need to clear it.
Okay. Cool. And yeah, the first part of that question is very important. Do you need to spray wet on tack, wet on wet, or you have to leave it dry and then spray the clear? And because the reason I'm asking is because I'm obsessed with adhesion. I have had issues with adhesion before, and I'm like, why is this happening? So I try always to achieve chemical adhesion first, and if it's not possible, mechanical, right?
Yep.
So is there a window of time that you have to follow? What? Yeah.
Yep. So with base coat, and again, always follow the technical data sheet. Like with DBC base coats, if it's uncatalyzed, they say, you have a 24-hour window and then you need to scuff it again. So let's just talk about, we're doing a complicated paint job. I'll paint it black, and let's say that, it took me all day or all morning to paint it black. I'd want to dry it for an hour or so before I start taping it and laying out a flame job or whatever I'm doing. Let's say I do my flame job and I run out of time. Well, I can't come in tomorrow or next week and sand it because I'll make my flame job or my black light, and I can't do that. So I risk clearing it, and now I have an adhesion problem. Nope, you're overthinking it. There's a way simpler way to do it. Is I'll do my black. If I'm inside that window, and again, I'm just going to say it's 24 hours because it's DBC. If you catalyzed it, it would be less.
Yeah.
I do my flame job. I run out of time. I could take that DBC 500, throw 1 or 2 coats over all of my artwork, let it sit for a day, a week, whatever. When I scuff it, I'm not scuffing up my color or my graphics. I'm scuffing up the DBC 500. I get it clean and dry, and now I can clear or rebase it, and I can lock it down as many times as I need to with the Intercoat clear.
Beautiful. Okay, so
it's a great product.
So generally speaking, you have a window of 24 hours of the base coat for chemical adhesion of whatever you're spraying on top of it.
Yeah.
After that, it's completely dry. You are not going to have any chemical adhesion. Okay.
Yeah, you definitely want to scuff it or sand it. But again, the problem is if you start sanding stuff, you're going to make it light. And then whatever you sanded, you really should blow that color over it. Where if we're talking just one color, it's not a big deal. But if you got a big old artsy fartsy guitar with like 13 different colors and stuff, that's a nightmare.
Oh yeah, and you cannot sand metallic. It looks horrible. It's not. Yeah,
you can sand it, but a good rule of thumb is if you sand your base, it's the candy you don't want to sand because it's lightened. If you do sand your metallics, let's say you have to, you got like a big booger in there, and you have no way around it. If you sand it, you definitely want to apply a medium coat, not wet, not light, a medium coat over the whole area again, so you don't see that light spot or where you disturb the aluminum flake.
Awesome. And last part of that question, when it's too soon, like if you apply a base coat and then 5 minutes away or 10 minutes after you spray the clear, is that too soon? You're gonna get solvent pop?
Yeah, I wouldn't go that fast. Ironically, let's say I'm painting a solid color, so
Uh-huh.
not a metallic candy or pearl. And it really depends on heat, humidity, and airflow because let's say you're in your garage at Texas and it's 80 degrees, and I'm in my paint booth in Michigan and it's 80 degrees.
Yeah.
You may have to wait twice as long as me, and you're like, what are you talking about? It's 80, it's 80. But because I'm moving so much air, my paint is drying faster.
Hmm.
Humidity plays a role in it. There's like 8 million things that play a role in it. But let's
Okay.
just talk like world of averages. If I'm spraying a solid color, uh, I'd probably wait a good 10, 15 minutes if it was a 70 to 80 degree day before I brought the clear. But if it was a metallic candy or a pearl, I would want to wait longer. Why? Because that clear is such a heavy body product. It's think about like a tsunami or a tidal wave knocking over a small town. That
Yeah.
clear could be enough to shift your metallics or pearls where it looks like you have slight modeling. So if you could wait a half an hour, 40 minutes, and then your first coat of clear, don't spray it dry, don't spray it full wet, but give it like a 90%, and then you can hammer on your next coat's full wet. You'll be less likely to distort that base coat, and that only applies to non-solid colors.
Ah, that's beautiful. Yeah, because it makes sense. The solvents of the clear are gonna move the metallic particles. If they're
I mean,
not
I,
right.
I painted silver cars like when I was younger. Let's say I was painting a silver metallic car. Nothing crazy, just a nice silver metallic car.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it. The hood, roof, deck lid is perfect. Like I laid down the metallic perfect. I waited 10 minutes, and I'm heavy handed. I don't dry spray anything. I'll run something before I dry spray it.
Yeah.
So I come in and I pound on like 3 coats of clear. I get it outside and I look at it, and it's not bad. But if I look at the hood, roof, and deck lid, there's some really, really minor, slight modeling. And I'm like, what's going on? There's no way. I looked at it. Am I blind? Am I crazy? It's because I should have waited longer, and maybe I should have dialed back my first coat of clear by 10% because, like you said, that the solvents and the heavy body clear, it's enough to just shift it a little bit.
Oh my God, beautiful. That piece of information I didn't know. Thank you very much.
Yep. When I
Uh,
was a kid, I had a Fender Stratocaster, like the same one like Jimi Hendrix had. And,
yeah.
and I wasn't good at playing it, but I liked it. It was a pretty guitar. I always played percussion. But in my bedroom at my house, I got a Dean Acoustic Exotica hanging on my wall. Now, I'm not good at playing it, but I have it. And then I have a black and white Gibson Les Paul Custom hanging on my wall. And
Oh
everyone
yeah.
that comes in there, they go, wow, do you play guitar? And I go, no, not really. They go, why do you have those guitars? I go, because they're pretty. They're works of art. And I bought the black one because I was thinking about painting it like a candy purple and black. And I just never got around to it.
Right. Yeah, it's fun. And actually, in the paint world, there's no difference between cars and guitars other than the substrate. It's wood,
Yep.
and of course, wood, the grain absorbs paint, and so you can see the little ridges over time.
Yep.
But yeah.
That that's like, okay, let's say you got a really bad guitar and you want it flat. The cool thing is obviously sand it, and you can start off with whatever grit you want. I would probably finish it with like around a 150 grit, get it clean, get it dry, power on 4 coats of that slick sand. And let's say, and I'm not talking about like a cold day. Let's say it's a 70, 80 degree day. Let it sit for a day or two. I would come in with something rough. Like people are like, oh, I wet sand with 400. Dude, that stuff is it'll be wavy. And
Yeah.
what you want to do is start off with something rough. Like I start with 80 grit. And then I'm not recommending your viewers to do that, but maybe 100 or 150 would be the finest I would start with. You can guide coat it, which is just like a lacquer spray paint, sand it all down with a hard block. The cool thing is, if you want to be really, really OCD, let that sit around for a couple weeks. It doesn't need more than a month. Because you broke that top shell off, it's going to breathe better, allowing the VOCs, aka the solvents, to evaporate faster. It's going to shrink. And then when you come in and do your 220 or your 400 or 600, any little like waves that when it shrank, you're going to take those out. And when you paint it, it's going to be perfect for 100 years.
Exactly. It's not going to move
that wave again. But if you painted, if you primed it, let's say on a Monday, and then you sanded it down, and then you painted it on a Tuesday, and then cleared it on a Wednesday, and then you wet sand and wheeled it on a Thursday, when you looked at it, you'd go, wow, this is perfect. That dude on the internet doesn't know what he's talking about. Fast forward 30 days, when it starts to shrink, you're going to start to see the wood and the waves and stuff because you locked all those solvents in. So if you can wait for it to flash, even my clear coat, I do that too. If I paint, let's say on a Monday and it's a hot day, I'll wait a day or two. I'll open it up with like some 800 or 600 because I've got so much so much clear on. I don't start with 1,000 or 1,500 like a lot of these guys. I'll start with 600 or 800. I'll sand all the dirt, all the peel out of it. Heaven forbid the runs. Let it sit for a couple days or a week. Then I'll work it all the way up, and then I polish it, and then that shrink too.
Yeah, so the moral of this story is that dry to the touch doesn't mean cured inside. It's still, there's still some solvents there.
Yep. Yeah. A good rule of thumb is a 2K product will take around 30 days to cure. It might be dry overnight or in a matter of a couple hours to the touch. Yep. But when it stops shrinking, that losing 50%, and base coat could lose 90% of its volume.
Very thin.
A good rule of thumb is you want to wait like 30 days for the curing process to go through. There's ways to speed it up. You could throw it outside. You could bake it. You could put a lamp on it. But usually 30 days is what it takes.
Yeah, actually, there are some polyester UV curing sealers that are like 95% solids. And so you can cure it and it will be ready, as you said, next day. But yeah,
they have UV primers now, and I don't know if it will stick to wood. They have PPG has a waterborne that's called EPW 115. It doesn't really fill a lot. The UVs are a lot thicker, but the cool thing is we could prime it today with water or UV. We could put our light on it, or with the primer, we could bake it, and it's cured today.
Oh my God.
And technology is getting better.
Yep. Awesome.
I'll throw a plug in there. If anybody wants to follow us on Instagram or YouTube, we're Refinish Media. And, every 2 weeks we put out usually paint and body related videos. So if you're interested in paint and body, we have a bunch of how-to videos out there.
Can you spray wood coating top coats like polyurethane, polyester, nitrocellulose lacquer over automotive base coats?
The question is, to be honest with you, the answer is maybe. And I would again go back to follow the system because it will probably work. But what I'm scared about is even with solvent and water is a lot of times you don't want to put one over the other because it could fail. Like guitars, we used to use a lot of lacquer and stuff on wood. And like basically the nitrocellulose lacquer is still available, but normal automotive lacquer is super expensive. It's getting harder and harder to find. Yeah. And I'm not a guitar expert, so I may be speaking out of school. I've always heard that if you're doing an acoustic guitar, one of the reasons why guys like lacquer is because it doesn't build up and it doesn't affect the sound or the tone.
That's correct.
And again, I'm not a master guitar builder, so I don't know. If you're doing an electric guitar, I would guess that that's not going to come into play. I would bail on all the lacquers. The only time I'd probably do a lacquer is if I had some old, valuable acoustic guitar and I really loved the sound and I was really worried that the polyesters or the urethanes were going to affect it. And again, I'm speaking a little out of school here.
No, you're actually absolutely right. And I avoid nitrocellulose. as much as possible because it's too thin. It never dries. I hate it, but some people like it because they want their guitar to look worn over time, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think unless you're worried about the tone of it, I would avoid lacquers for the reasons you said. Is there? It's just old school technology. It's like, hey, I want to enter a race. Okay, let's go buy a brand new Corvette. No, I'm going to take this Model T. A car is a car. That's not true. That's old technology.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, because there's no cross linking. It's just the resin is sitting there after the solvent evaporates. It's yeah.
Yeah. Here's a good one for you, and you'll
Yeah.
appreciate this one. Is everyone gets hung up on what 2K means. Like people will say, do you use 2K primer? I use 2K everything. 2K basically means two components. And I know it's supposed to be a C, but it's German. You know, the crazy Germans, the Europeans, they spell it with a K, not a C. All it means is like people will go, well, my clear coat has 4 parts clear, 1 part catalyst, 1 part reducer. So is that a 3K? No, it's still a 2K. The
Uh-huh.
only thing 2K means is it has an activator, catalyst, or hardener in it. Where like most base coats, most rattle can paint, that's 1K because it never cures. It only dries by evaporation. With a
Exactly.
2K, it cures. And here's a good, we call it the 2 bucket story. I got 2 5-gallon buckets of water. The first one, the water, let's pretend it's solvent reducer. But, you know, if I dump my dirt in there, that's kind of like lacquer. It makes like a muddy dirt and it never cures. What happens is over time it dries, all the water evaporates, and paint, it would be solvent. And then the dirt lays nice and flush and flat, and lacquer looked pretty, you know. But the problem with 1K is if I spill water back on it, like in guitars, if I spill gas or thinner or any heavy solvent, it's going to melt it. Well, with 2K, the reason why it's so expensive, you still have the water. In our case, it's solvent. You dump concrete mix in it. You still get the muddy mess. You still need the evaporation of the solvents, or in our case, the water. But over time, there's a chemical reaction that happens, and it changes that muddy mess into concrete. And it may dry in a day, but it takes a long time to cure. But over time, if you put water on it, it's not going to melt that paint or that concrete. So that's why you want to use 2K products. They're way superior than that old 1K rattle can stuff. I know they're
Oh,
more expensive.
there's no question about it. Super mega superior, and yeah, I don't even want to consider nitro or anything. By the way,
Yeah.
that was a really beautiful explanation because you can see it graphically. Let's say, you know.
Thank you.
There is a third product called pre-catalyzed lacquer, which I suppose, based on the name, that you have the catalyzer and the resin in one bottle
Yep.
or one can, and whenever you apply it, the evaporation is what makes the catalyzation happen. I guess.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
They actually there's a company, and I got to think of it for a minute. It'll come to me, and they're not the only company. They'll actually sell like a rattle can of paint or primer or clear, and it's not like the normal rattle can that you would get at the hardware store. You bang the bottom, and it's 2K, and it mixes, and you could spray it. Now there's a pot light that will only be good for a couple hours or a day. But the cool thing is, instead of being a 1K product, it's a 2K product. And it's not exactly like what you were explaining, but it triggered my mind that they do make, like, if you don't have a compressor or a gun and you wanted something better than spray paint, and I keep wanting to say it's CarMax, but it's not. It's
Yeah, I looked it up. It's called Spraymax 2K.
Spray Max. Yep,
Yeah.
Spray Max. And it's expensive, but the cool thing is depending on where you live, in theory, you could walk into a paint store and go, hey, load this DuPont clear or this PPG clear or BASF. No, I don't want that stuff. That's junk. Load this stuff. And they could load it and you could walk out with it. It is
Right,
more
right.
expensive, but if that's all you got, it's it's worth knowing about.
Yeah, actually, that's a really great product, and I see on forums that a lot of hobbyists use it instead of like lacquer in order to get like as close as possible to a 2K professional finish. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was a good one.
Yeah.
This one. How do you determine the flash time between base coats and clear coats? Does
Yep.
this depend on the manufacturer recommendation, or is there a general guideline?
Yeah, it definitely depends on the manufacturer's recommendation. I would always follow the technical data sheet. If I was using PPG or BASF, I would go onto their website. I would download it or screenshot it from my phone. And if it says wait 10 to 15 minutes in between coats of base, that's the minimum amount of time. So if you can wait 5 or 10 minutes longer, it probably play in your advantage.
Yeah.
And then it would say like how long before you would clear. But if we're just going to generalize, I would say if it was between 70 and 80 degrees, it'd be cool to wait 10 minutes in between coats of base. And if we're just generally talking, I would say it would be nice to wait 20 to 30 minutes before you brought on your first round of clear. And most clear is around 10 minutes in between coats.
Oh wow,
But
Mhm.
I would always follow the technical data sheet because not all clear coats are the same. But if I had to generalize, I'd be correct 98% of the time with that just blanket statement.
Okay, and if you go longer than that, when you're clearing, is what would be your max that you have? Yeah.
It depends on the window, and you would almost have to call the tech support company
Yeah.
because they may not list it. Is I wouldn't wait more than, let's say, an hour between coats. But I'll tell you what, I do know that there are products that you can spray 8 hours, even 24 hours later with clear, and it will go back into it. The company has told me before that that's fine, you can do it. I'm not doing that. That's crazy. If I'm waiting 24 hours, I'll just wait a day or two, sand the clear down again, and then do another round of clear. I mean, that's me. So it's funny because we were talking about stacking earlier. Is let's say that I buy this clear, and let's say that this clear I can put 5, 6 coats of clear on. And again, that's not the vast majority of clears. But let's say I get this PPG 5050 or VC 5700. Let's say that the P sheet says it's 10 minutes flash time between coats. I put the first coat on, I wait 10 minutes. The second coat, I wait 15 minutes. The third coat, I wait 20 minutes or 25 minutes. The fourth coat, I wait a half an hour. The fifth coat, I'm waiting because the more coats I put on, the more solvent and the more fragile it is. So as time progresses, when I'm in this weird situation where I'm piling on a ton of product, I'm actually making my flash times a little bit longer. That's a good trick for guys that are worried about solvent pop or dieback. And I would always, always, always recommend a slower catalyst and a slower reducer than you think, because fast catalysts, medium reducers, those will solvent pop. You
Oh
want the slow stuff.
yeah, man, I have had the solvent pop, and it's bad. That last piece of information was great to increase gradually your flash times. That was good.
What are the use cases for adhesion promoters?
I don't think I would use any adhesion promoter on wood. I don't use any adhesion promoter on metal. Like plastic, you could argue, like everyone loves Bulldog. I
Yeah.
always say it's for the pores, like the internet pores, and I'm sorry. It's not a bad product, but the
Yeah.
cool thing is PPG makes the product called One Choice. If you have some raw plastic that like nothing wants to stick to it and you've been burned by it before, and this stuff works better than anything out there that Bulldog has even thought of. But if I'm being honest with you, is the polyester is going to stick to the wood with zero adhesion issues.
Awesome.
The If you have a steel guitar, put epoxy down first to protect the bare metal from rusting around, or even the aluminum. That has got the best chemical adhesion known to man. So that is your adhesion promoter built in. And
Right.
then let's say I was doing some plastic. You could do the One Choice stuff if it was like raw plastic, but there's nothing wrong with throwing a light coat of epoxy down letting it sit for a day or two, because that epoxy will stick to anything. I mean, that's the best adhesion promoter known to man.
Sometimes people confuse primers with sealers. What is the difference?
There's a lot of jargon and slang in our industry.
Ah,
So
yeah.
it gets confusing, and I'm not the grammar police, so who am I to say what's right or wrong? But I'll tell you, like, my understanding of it is, if I have bare metal, I'm going to put an epoxy primer down to protect it. And I hear a lot of people say, "Yeah, I want to seal up the bare metal," and that like messes with my brain, because I'm like, no, you're not sealing it, you're priming it.
Uh-huh.
So technically, sealer should be used before base coat, and primer is underneath. And there's different kinds of primers. And
Mhm.
there is some products that, depending on how you mix it, can be a high build primer, or if you thin it down, can be a sealer. But technically, sealer and primer are two different products.
Ah, good to know. Okay, so a sealer is usually between the primer and the base coat. Okay.
Yes. And the funny thing is, okay, let's say you got a gray primer that's, traditionally the color of it, and you're going to paint it red. A lot of people in the olden days, and this is going back to Greg Merrill and Boyd Coddington, they would paint the car yellow first, and then they would paint it red. And the world, the hot rod world, was like, why do you do that? Because it makes the red pop more, and it makes it more vivid, and it makes the
Mm.
red look a little oranger, and it just makes it stand out. And the cool thing is you can still do that today, but with the cost of paint is so expensive, you could actually buy a white sealer and put that down first, and then put your red, and it's the same price: white sealer, gray sealer, black sealer, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then that way would make your red pop. Or how about this? You're painting a black car. Why do you want to use gray sealer? Because it might take you a coat or two more to cover it with the black base. Why not just use a black sealer? You get one coat on, your guitar or your motorcycle or whatever is almost covered. You put two coats of base on it, check it with the light, and then you can go to your clear or your graphics. So using a sealer, you could use it to color match better, or you could use it to color hide where you need less coats of base.
Oh, I see. So that would be the use case for sealer. Is for nothing else, because if you need just a product or substrate to for the base coat to adhere to, why do you have to use sealer? I never understood that.
You and we believe in this thing called when in doubt, seal it out. So that's like the rule that I live by. If you had your guitar in primer and it was sitting in, like, let's say a true 600 grit, and there was no cut throughs, so you didn't have any exposed wood or anything like that, you could go right to base. But sometimes, let's say you got a little bit of stuff that's burned through, or this, that, or the other, you probably want to seal it, because sealer is kind of like a thinned down version of primer.
Oh, that's a good way to see it. Yeah, if you burn through a little bit, yeah, you can use the sealer. That's
Yeah,
that's a
because you
good
don't
one.
want to be putting base on raw steel or raw plastic or raw wood. You're going to have
No.
adhesion issues. So, but I mean, if you had your car in primer or your guitar in primer and there was no burn throughs, it was perfect. You could skip the sealer. It would save you money. It'd be less mills, which is always a thinner paint job is always better. Less
Yep.
peel, because everyone thinks that the peel just comes from the clear. Nah, the sealer's adding a lot of peel. The
Yeah.
base coat is adding peel too. So if you can eliminate it, it might be a good call to ditch the sealer.
What are the best techniques to spray metallics?
Okay.
Mhm.
Make sure, first of all, make sure you're using a good base coat with a good high quality reducer, and you want to lean towards a slow reducer. In PPG's world, it's a 1-to-1 mix, but
Yep.
make sure whatever base coat you're using, if it's a 2-to-1 or whatever it is, you're using the actual reduction that the manufacturer suggests. I would lean towards, when you're spraying metallic candies or pearls, I would lean towards an HVLP. And An HVLP is going to atomize better. It's going to put it on even. Make sure that you test your gun to make sure that your gun is working. And I guess we could talk about how to do a spray test. You don't want to spray it on dry, but you don't want to spray it on smoking wet. Like my primers, my clear coats, my sealers. Let's say a 10 is full wet, and people go, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, 11, you run it. When
Okay.
I'm spraying clear coat, when I'm spraying a primers, I'm spraying at a 9 or a 10. I'm borderline running it. I'm like pushing it to the limit, and I'm certainly not using an HVLP for those. When I'm
Yeah.
spraying a base coat, I'm only spraying at a 5. It never gets fully wet.
Ooh.
And
Okay.
is lighter coats, and I'm not saying drier, because drier is bad. It'll make your metallics look coarser. Is I'm doing lighter coats, I'm using slower reducers, and I'm using an HVLP and a quality gun. You in your drop downs, your overlaps, you can make them tighter, and that will solve 99% of your problems.
Oh wow! And what about the air pressure? Is it like a strong air pressure or lower?
It's definitely less. It's gun specific.
Yeah.
Iwata, Sada, DeVilbiss are the three biggest guns. If you're using Harbor Freight guns, they're more than likely a knockoff of one of those three. Let's talk Sada. Sada, for the last 30 years, they recommend up to 29 psi.
For
And I don't
metallics.
care
Okay.
what paint gun it is. So if I'm shooting sealer or base, or if I'm shooting sealer or primer or clear through, let's say, my RP, I'm probably maxing that gun out. Let's say I'm going to spray some base. I'm probably 16 to 22 psi. So I'm a third down or more from the recommended. And like if you got like let's say the Vilvis Techna, which is a really popular gun, like the copper,
Yeah.
that gun on the air cap says 22 psi max. So if I'm
Mm.
spraying clear coat or sealer with it, I'm maxing that bad boy out. I'm giving it all it's got, 22 psi. When I
Okay.
spray base, I may be 14 to 16 psi. Again, I'm that third down or whatever. So base coat, you always do want to dial back your pressure because it's not going to go on as wet, and it'll look nicer too.
Yeah, definitely. I have tried both ways, super high pressure and low pressure, and definitely the best results have been low pressure. But I
Yeah.
wanted to be sure and make sure with
Yep.
you. You know.
No, you're doing it right. There's a company called Luma 3, and I have a discount code that would save your viewers 7%. It's Refinish Media 7. They make some really nice guns, but the reason why I like their guns is like, you know, my SATAs are like $1,000 a piece. My
Uh huh.
Awadas are almost $1,000 a piece. Uh, People are like, well, I'll just buy a Harbor Freight $100 gun. I mean, I don't want to get into it. I think that $100 gun is going to cost you money over time. But these Lumas, the list price on them is like in the fours, without the discount code. Sometimes they run specials. What I like about them is they atomize really well. They have great transfer efficiency. They're very small and lightweight. They're perfect for like guitars and stuff. The owners of the company are just like two normal dudes in Wichita, Kansas. They answer the phone. Oh no, you want this tip, or what's the problem? They're not this big company, but they
Hmm.
even sell this light that will go on the guns, and the light's expensive, but it's cool. It's like list price is like $300.
Yeah.
But if you're painting in your garage and you're trying to visually see what's going on, the light will move from gun to gun, and it's a game changer for guys that are painting in their garage. And it's a
Hmm.
color corrective light too. And again, I know that's not cheap, but at least it's not $1,000 SATA or $1,000 Iwata too.
Yeah, I saw another guitar maker using it, and I got a little bit jealous. I'm like, I want to get one. You know.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
nice. I mean, if you reach out to the company, they might give you one or give you a discount on them. Drop our name. The guy's
Ooh.
name's Chris. One of the guys that own it. They're really cool. Great company. Yep.
Okay.
We're Refinish Media,
Mhm.
and basically we're on every platform. We're on YouTube. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok. We're on Facebook. We actually have two accounts on Facebook. That's a long story how we got into that. But anyway, we should only have one, but we have two. And every day we release like a 60-second short, and it's pretty much paint and body related. And then every 2 weeks we release a short video. I don't know, could be 15 minutes long, could be 40 minutes long. And it's basically how to do things the right way. There's plenty of videos out there, and I'm not trying to get on my high horse or my soapbox, but there's plenty of guys out there that are showing you how to hack things up and do it cheap and how to cut corners. And that's cool. If that's what you want to do, we're probably not the people for you.
Yeah.
We're trying to show you how to do it the correct way. And a lot of people say, well, that's his correct way. No. We're going by what the manufacturers recommend. We're going by what the company recommends. And we're going by what decades of doing it every day has taught us. This paint stuff in guitars are so expensive. Your time is so expensive. It's not, in my opinion, it's not worth it to do it 2 or 3 times because it saved you $50, but it took you 2 days longer. That's madness. So we really focus in on how to do it the OCD correct way.
That's a good one, yeah.
Is it a good idea to reduce clear coats for better flow?
Like if you, let's say you bought, we call it a kit of clear. The reason why I call it a kit of clear is people say, how much is a gallon of clear? Well, a gallon of clear does me no good without the catalyst. So I need to know what the kit of clear costs. If I buy a kit of clear and let's say it's 4-to-1 or 2-to-1 and it doesn't have any reducer, automatically a little light bulb goes in my head. It's either A, a speed clear, or B, it's some cheap garbage clear. So, and that's not true 100% of the time, but it's true 99.999% of the time. I want a clear coat that I don't care if it's 2-to-1-to-1 or 4-to-1-to-1 or 3-to-1-to-1. I want a clear coat that I can change if it's fast, medium, or slow, the reducer for my conditions, my temperature, my style to get it to flow out better. But let's say I'm using a clear coat that's 2-to-1 and there's no reducer in there. You can add some reducer. It will thin it out. It will help it flow out better, but I would not add more than 10%. So if I mix up 30 ounces of clear, so that a 2-to-1 mix ratio would be 20 ounces of clear, 10 ounces of hardener. I have 30 ounces RTS, meaning ready to spray. I would only add 3 ounces of reducer because that's 10% to give me 33 ounces total. And I would go with slow reducer, and it will help flow out and get less clear.
Awesome.
Less peel.
Less peel. Yeah, because if you go more than 10%, you might start degrading the resin, and it will be a weak finish, right?
And be honest with you, whatever you add in reducer, that's going to shrink because the reducer is going to evaporate, and that's going to shrink. So, like, let's say you started with a product that had a 50% high solid contents, and you just chug a bunch of clear in it. You could take it down to 10% high solid contents because that reducer, you just thinned it out too much.
Oh, yeah.
So you're 100% correct with what you said, but you're also messing with the solid contents too.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. Well, my friend, that's all the questions. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, hey, I appreciate you, sir. Thank you so much. Good luck with the guitars.
Thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Yes, sir. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.